So Investigation with Dr. T was the brainchild of our dean, Dr. Kimberly Durham. She said, do you think that you could do some type of an ongoing podcast about criminal justice? And I said, yeah, of course, definitely. And so that's sort of how it all started. So I thought that this year, what I would do is sort of call it the empowerment season. I really want to highlight and validate these folks who have turned their lives around. For the last season, we had on folks like Gregory Boyle from Homeboy Industries. He's a Jesuit priest who runs the largest gang rehabilitation program in the country. Let's look at folks who have actually succeeded at Homeboy, for example, and have a homeboy and a homegirl come on the show and talk about their experiences being in a gang. What was that like? What attracted them to Homeboy? And how has their lives changed and turned around as a result of it? This is really awesome. Justice restored, life after exoneration. And so I have an exoneree coming on, Willie McDonald. Willie was incarcerated wrongfully. I want to really zero in on what was that like for Willie. Dr. Barry Ryman, who is the clinical director at Recovery Unplugged, and Richie Supa, who is a former band member of Aerosmith. I have them both come on, talk about addiction, and talk about music. He's going to talk about how music as a modality can really be effective in helping addicts fight addiction. And of course, we're going to have student spotlight, former alum, etc., on some really cool and interesting topics. We are going to bring back UnFound, Ed Dentzel, most definitely. This season of empowerment, like the gangs, former gang members, former folks who are incarcerated, and folks who struggle with addiction. I think that those are just like really important for folks to hear, and our students to hear, and even our faculty to hear.
And so we always like to just kind of put a trigger warning out there in case some of the stuff that we talk about here, it's not too feel good-ish. So, but it's real. And I am so thrilled because tonight, who do we have? We have Ed Dentzel. We have my friend, Ed Dentzel, who is the host of the podcast. It's a video podcast and a podcast, both an audio as well as a video and audio show that
yes
focuses on, and let me just going to add the spotlight for him. So what it focuses on, as you know, for those of you who know Ed and his followers that are watching us probably right now on YouTube, he dedicates his life as a journalist. He's a journalist, he's a filmmaker, he's an actor, and a news reporter, and now he's an investigator. He's an investigator, a true crime investigator, if you will. But he's not like all the rest. He's the real deal. And he really means what he says when he's trying to give voice to those who are unfound. And so welcome. So happy you're here. I'm Dr. Grace Telesco, by the way, in case anybody doesn't know that already. And associate professor, director of the School of Criminal Justice, and very excited to be the host of Investigation with Dr. T. So without any further ado, Ed, here's the thing. I made this, you gave me all of these photos for tonight.
Yes.
And so I want to be able to share that right away.
Okay.
And what I did is I just, while you're kind of setting the stage, I thought I'd leave up these photos. What do you think?
Great.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Ed, we are with bated breath waiting to hear about this very, very interesting disappearance.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It seems like we just did this. In fact, we did just do this a couple weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
Where I went missing as an example of a disappearance. Halloween night, I tried to dress up in my best Uncle Sam outfit. I don't know if that worked out or not, but of course, 2 weeks ago, it was a little more laid back. Of course, it was a hypothetical of myself going missing while trick-or-treating with friends and family. But we kind of changed the tone now this week because this is a real disappearance. It was a real disappearance. And not meaning to spoil anything, but Bowman's disappearance did come to an end, and I'm going to talk about all of that tonight. So although we were very laid back a couple weeks ago, this is as serious as it gets this time around here in November for the disappearance of Bowman. And this is a disappearance that even before UnFound got to it, had gotten some national attention. And that I ended up reaching out to his mother, who ended up being the guest. And I don't know if it was a coincidence. I'm not sure if UnFound had something to do with it. But only a few months after UnFound's coverage, Bowman was discovered deceased. And so I actually do a series for my Patreon supporters called Found. And this is kind of that type of situation where we're going to go from the disappearance of Bowman to the discovery of Bowman tonight. So this is a solved disappearance. Although I have to say, even though it is resolved, still a lot of unanswered questions. Might be that way forever. I think we have to prepare ourselves for that. And there are a lot of different viable theories. And we'll get to that at the end. So it's good to be here. Again, Dr. Telesco, thank you for having me on. So Bowman, this is a disappearance that UnFound just covered within the last couple of years. And as I already said, coincidence or not, he was found deceased not long after. But we're going to go through all of that because his disappearance has a little bit of everything. Kind of a little bit of a well-known figure within the sober community, people who are trying to kick their habits. He was very well known there. He lived in Santa Monica in LA, had a lot of friends, had a lot of family, very popular guy. And just like I said, when we look at disappearances, sometimes you have some disappearances that are just like one particular type. Bows cover so many different topics within the general category of disappearance. And I think that's why, once again, it got a lot of national attention, both before he was found and then even after. So let's get started. Bowman was 39 years old. I'm going to read a little bit from the script of when UnFound featured his disappearance in 2023. And then we're going to get into a little bit of a timeline and everything. And we even can infuse an actress into this disappearance as well. That a lot of questions these days still being asked about her in relation to his disappearance. So Bo, 39 years old. And his claim to fame was that he started an app that could be downloaded to your Android phone or your iPhone called Sober Grid. Unfortunately, they decided to close that app up. I think it was just earlier this year in 2024. But Bo had started this from his own experience as being an addict. And he created this app so people who were getting sober, recovering alcoholics, recovering drug addicts, they could go onto this app and support each other.
What is it called?
Sober Grid. Sober and then GRID. Sober.
Do you know if he was part of a 12-step fellowship like AA or NA?
I don't know if he did AA. I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
Ring a bell. I think that he actually went to some retreat in California, and that's how he got sober. And from that, that's how he created this app.
Like a retreat, or was it rehab?
I think so. It was some sort of fancy retreat. I think I might have had it in my notes. It was in Malibu. I think I even have it there. I'm going to read about it. Passages is what it's called.
That sounds like a rehab.
All right. So I'm going to read this, and I think some of these questions will be answered.
Great.
He's 39 years old, and he was from Massachusetts, but he lived in California for quite a while. He started his life in Massachusetts. He then moved to Texas for a little bit. He went to New York City. He loved the hustle and bustle of all of it. And along the way, he had a variety of jobs, including working at a furniture store, picking out art that would complement whatever customers bought as far as furniture goes. They also sold art there. However, along the way, of course, Bo was not a youngster. He wasn't in his 20s. He was in the upper range of like the bell curve of what we usually feature for Disappearance Unfound. He was 39 years old. But along the way, he had developed a drug addiction. And that eventually put him in the Passages Rehab Facility in Malibu, California. So me being from Pennsylvania, that sounds pretty fancy to me. But that's where he went, and he recovered. And through that, Bo turned a negative into a positive by creating a now popular app, but it's now shut down, called Sober Grid. And you should know, during the process of putting that in episode together about a year and a half ago, I had actually downloaded the Sober Grid to my phone, even though I don't have any addictions and everything, just to check it out. Seemed pretty good app to me, even though, like I said, the people who had designed it with him chose eventually to shut it down for some reason. I don't know why. But he started this popular app called Sober Grid for recovering addicts, where they can go to seek support and help. So on November 30th of 2021, so almost exactly 3 years ago, that's not how Dr. Telesco and I planned it, but it's just the way it worked out. Actually, November 30th of 2021, so right after Thanksgiving, just after 2 p.m., and I'm going to get more specific into the timeline here in a bit. Bo got into an Uber at the 11,000 block of Ventura Boulevard. You should know, when I used to go to LA all the time in Las Vegas, I know this intersection. I've been to that intersection. I know exactly where it is. Seemingly headed for his home address in Santa Monica, about 25 minutes away. However, shortly after that, Bo changed the destination to a house. It's going to be very important later, right across the street from his gym, but still in the Santa Monica area. Then only minutes after that, the Los Angeles, I don't know if it was LA County or the city of Los Angeles, 911 system received a text from Bo's phone, although the message did not seem urgent. The 911 operator texted back, but there was no response from Bo. He was never seen again. When tracked down weeks later, the Uber driver claimed he dropped Bo off and there was no problem at this address across from Bo's gym, across the street from Bo's gym. Bo paid, and the driver seemingly knew nothing about the 911 text. Likewise, the resident at the Santa Monica address claimed she had never heard of Bo. To go a little more into that, what's important to understand about this 911 text is it was not, see, I have my phone right here. It was not done the way we normally understand texting, like going to the messages part and then texting to 911. It was actually a 911 application within the Uber app. For example, somebody might be using the Uber app while they're on a trip, and if they don't have the ability to go to the regular texting system on their phone, whether they have T-Mobile or Verizon, they can actually contact 911 through the Uber app. I suppose you might be able to do this with Lyft too. But he did that through the app. And this is what was a little weird about all of this. And all that text said later, much later, when they were able to put this all together, is that he said that he was in a gray car Uber, and that's the color of the car that he was in, that he had been picked up in. It wasn't like, well, the driver is threatening me. It wasn't like, I'm afraid, I'm scared, somebody's following me, nothing. It just was a text saying, I'm in this color car. I'm in I'm in a Uber now, gray. That's all it said. But no, of course, we all know about 911 calls, how, people are very scared. They're very specific about a threat. There's a fire. Somebody's following me. Somebody's trying to break into my house. It wasn't anything like that. So once he got dropped off at this particular address, he was seemingly never seen again. And like I said, to this day, doing this show on November 14th of 2024. Still a lot of unanswered questions. So here is the exact timeline. Now that I've gone through the generalities of how he ended up going missing, here are the exact times and locations for Bo that day. He started off at 11:20 at his apartment in Santa Monica, and he walked to a coffee bean and tea leaf store. At 12:03 p.m., Bo was picked up by a Lyft. So he used both the most popular ride services during this day. It wasn't just Uber, it wasn't just Lyft. For some reason, he mixed them up. He combined them. Bo was picked up by a Lyft car at 11,699 Darlington Avenue in Brentwood, very near where this coffee bean is. And that is 3 blocks away from his apartment. At 11:29, he was dropped off by that Lyft. And maybe when we want to go to the picture now, if you could, like that big circle, the blue circle of the map, Dr. T, if you could do that while I'm doing this. Thank you. At 11:29, dropped off by Lyft at 601 Kohler Street in LA. There you go. Thank you very much. So that now we're going, if you're looking at the map there, that is down in the bottom right-hand corner. So the southeast corner of the map, the picture that you're looking at. He was dropped off at 12:29 at 601 Kohler Street in LA. And even if you look closely on the map, I don't know if we don't have to blow it up or anything, but even say on the map, that is actually the Skid Row area of downtown LA, an area populated by addicts, homeless people. That is where Bo was dropped off at 12:29. Then only 7 minutes later, a Uber ride was scheduled, then canceled by Bo at 506 East 3rd Street to 601 South Central. So once again, down in that bottom right-hand corner that we're looking at there, a ride was scheduled, then canceled. He said where he was, he said where he wanted to go, and then for some reason, he immediately canceled it. So that was at 12:36. At 12:44, so 8 minutes later, though, a Lyft car picked him up at 920 East 6th Street, also within what we would call the invisible boundary of that area that's considered to be the Skid Row area of downtown LA. So 12:44, he is picked up after spending about 15 minutes in that area. What he was doing down there all these years later, we still don't know. Nobody's come forward to say, I saw him there. What he was doing there, nobody knows. There's any, for example, any credit card information. If he used his credit card or anything down there, we don't know. But in his work with Sober Grid, you might hypothesize, was he down there looking for people hanging on the streets, trying to help them out, telling them about the app? If you want to break your addiction, this is the way to do it. Possible. So 12:44, he gets picked up at 920 East 6th Street. And then what would that be? 28 minutes later, he now goes up, if you're looking at the map, now in the top center of the map, so the direct north up there where it says 5806 Kramer Avenue, etc. So 16 minutes or 18 minutes after getting picked up in Skid Row, he is dropped off at 5626 Vineland in North Hollywood. That is a shopping center. And they were able to figure out later what he was doing there, that there is a massage parlor that seemingly he had gone to before. And they went and talked, eventually police and friends went and talked to the people there, and they said they remember him. This is where Bo went, to this massage parlor in this shopping center in North Hollywood. And the place is called Praya Massage, Praiya is the name of the place. And they actually spoke to a woman who seemingly, allegedly saw him there. But what's interesting is that he didn't spend too much time there. I'm not a massage guy. There's something about having strangers put their hands on me. That's just me personally. But it seems to me, don't massages usually last like a half hour, 45 minutes or something. I guess the length may vary. Bo wasn't even at this massage parlor for a half hour. And instead, so he's dropped off at this massage parlor at 1:12. Well, 29 minutes later, he was getting picked up. He was already getting picked up, but he didn't get picked up at the massage parlor. For some reason, he chose to get picked up at a house address near the shopping center. And that address, as you can see on the screen, is 5806 Kramer Avenue. So this was the pickup by the person who eventually dropped him off where he went missing. So at 1:51, an Uber picked him up at 5806 Kramer Avenue. From what I was told, was right around the corner from where the massage place is. And then the next drop off, the next stop, was at that 11,000 Ventura Boulevard address already mentioned. There is a 7-Eleven there. In fact, I think I've even been in that 7-Eleven like 20 years ago. At 2:00, which is about right. Once again, you can see this all on the map as we're going like in a counterclockwise route at the map that's on the screen. We're going counterclockwise direction. So at 2:00, he is dropped off at that 7-Eleven. In the 7-Eleven, he buys ice, he buys gum, he buys mouthwash. And what was weird, he's exiting the 7-Eleven about 2:06, but in the process, we're not ready for this. You can keep it on that other, the big circle photo there. You can just keep it there. It's fine. And as he's leaving, though, he has his computers with him, just like I take my computers, my laptops everywhere. He had them with him, and for some reason, they like dropped out of his bag, and he had to like clean everything up right there, right inside or right outside that 7-Eleven. So he bought this stuff, and then he was leaving. Something fell out of his backpack, and he had to put computers and everything back in this backpack. But no problems there. Didn't have any problems seemingly with anybody. And so this Uber that had picked him up near the massage parlor, that driver stuck around outside while he was inside. So the meter's running. So 2:06, he's seen leaving the 7-Eleven. Well, this is where the 911 text occurs. So as you're looking at this map, as he's going west up there in the top left-hand corner of the map, 9 minutes after leaving the 7-Eleven, he makes this text through the 911 system within the Uber app. And it says, "I'm in an Uber, gray, Grey, as to describe the car." As I stated in the summary before, 911 tried to reach back out to him, never returned a text, never returned any calls. They never did actually have any back and forth with Bo in this car. So then eventually, and right down there in the bottom left-hand corner of the map that you're looking at. So after that, the car goes to the west and then goes directly south down to that little red dot you see in the bottom left-hand corner. And at 2:35, which is about the time it's taken, nothing unusual about the time or the direction or anything else, seems like just like a regular trip. He was dropped off at 2:35 p.m. at 1338 Berkeley Avenue or Street in Santa Monica. That is a house that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Now, what's also interesting about this, now, of course, they found all of this out after he went missing. And at 2:45, though, just 10 minutes after he got dropped off, somebody tried to access his Wells Fargo account and was denied. So 10 minutes after he got dropped off at 1338, somebody, maybe him, maybe somebody else, still up for a lot of theorizing, somebody was denied. We don't know the IP address. We don't know if he was using like just the T-Mobile service that you can have 5G network or whatever it would be. Was he using somebody's Wi-Fi? I've never heard that information. You'd think you'd be able to figure that out with IP addresses and everything. But I have to tell you that I don't know what that information is. I don't know. So this is how he went missing. Now, of course, what happened, Bo knew a lot of people, a lot of friends in business. They quickly realized that something wasn't right. And eventually, during their work, friends, family, and LA PD, they were able to put that timeline that I've just read off to you together. But it took some time. Of course, lining up phones and information, the Uber and Lyft information, getting into his bank statements, on and on and on. It took quite a while to put that timeline together that I just read off here for the last 12 minutes or whatever. But there was nothing unusual. They went to his apartment. There was nothing unusual there. Didn't look like anything unusual was missing. Nobody had broken in there. He had a car that there was something wrong with it, and that's why he was taking Lyft and Uber everywhere. He had to get it fixed. The way I remember it, it wasn't a Honda. It was some sort of more exotic. Was it a Porsche or something? Was it an Audi or something like that? And he just hadn't got it fixed yet. Did not think it was reliable enough just to ride around LA. So that's why he was taking these Ubers and Lyfts everywhere. But nothing unusual about that. They went over to his place. Seemed just like he just picked up and left. And of course, he's missing. His computer's missing, both of them. His phone's missing. His ID's missing. Everything is missing. And of course, what did they do first in this investigation once they put all this together? Well, they went and talked to the Uber driver. And a lot of people, even maybe to this day, are suspicious of the Uber driver. We know his name. I'm not going to mention it here in the show tonight. And the reason that people were suspicious of the Uber driver is the Uber driver claimed, well, I dropped him off where he lives. The problem was, of course, 1338 is not where Bo lived. So that really brought attention. Well, he said that doesn't make any sense. I don't know if that's suspicious or not, because maybe the Uber driver just took for granted, well, I dropped him off in front of a house. That must be where he lives. And you should know, a lot of people have looked into this Uber driver. He doesn't have a criminal record. I think he even still works for Uber, 3 years later. So if he was suspected of anything, if they looked into him, they didn't find anything, even though he made this very curious statement. Well, I dropped Bo off where he lived. Yeah, but no, you didn't. That's not where he lived. 1338 is not the address. So they looked at him. Now, you may be asking, well, who does live at 1338 Berkeley Street? This is where it gets, you could start going down rabbit holes here. The woman who lived there, her name was Joanna Good, Goode. And she has her own story separate from Bo's disappearance. Now, what's interesting, given the way Joanna was living her life, she would be the type of person that Bo would know, because she had a huge drug problem. Now, what's interesting about her is if you go to imdb.com, the Internet Movie Database, you will find her on there. And probably the most famous thing she ever did about 30 years ago, she was on an episode of Married with Children. And it's one of the most famous episodes of Married with Children, where Kelly Bundy, Christina Applegate, is competing to be the spokesmodel for the new Cadillac Alante, which was a new car at the time. And she invented something called the Bundy Bounce. And Joanna Good is in that episode, and she was one of Kelly Bundy's competitors to get this position. So you can go back and see that episode and see Joanna Good in that episode. And as you can imagine, being that she's playing a model, very attractive young woman. The problem is, over the next 30 years, she was in some other things, but she developed a huge drug problem, big time problem. And she's the one who lived at 1338 Berkeley Street in Santa Monica by herself. Although this house was known as a place where people would go and do drugs and, kind of, stay there for a little while, then leave, stay there and leave, kind of a flop house for people, you might say, just people maybe you don't even have a place to stay. Joanna was known, she owned the house, she bought it, but a lot of illegal things were going on there. But you have to remember, as I stated in the beginning, this house was right across the street from Beau's gym. And in fact, when they first started looking into his disappearance, knowing that he had got dropped off there, they went to the gym, and the gym was like, no, we didn't see him that day. Well, as you can imagine, when this was all found out, they really, family and friends really started to go after Joanna. And you can, to this day, find her defending herself. If you go to Facebook and people going after her and claiming, what happened to Beau. And she said over and over and over, I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about his disappearance. Nothing. Even though, like I said, she lived right across the street from his gym. And like I said, also, she seems like the type of person that Beau would have known. And I'll come back to that in a bit. And I can say this, and I'm not going to use any names, but it got so crazy with people becoming obsessed with Joanna Good and her possible involvement. And I think the more she claimed she didn't know what happened, I think it was one of those thou dost think you protest too much type of things going on. Maybe. And they even did some illegal things to try to catch her in a lie. And I actually, in putting the episode together back in 2023, did I get this? I know I at least heard audio. I might have even gotten to see video. Somebody actually snuck onto her property and put GoPro cameras and microphones in a tree on her property, hoping that they would catch her talking about Beau and what happened to him. All right, we know that's highly illegal, but this is what, Beau had a very loyal following. He helped out a lot of people with their addictions, and they were just desperate to find out what happened to him. And of course, this is not the first time I've heard a story about a family and friends doing things illegally to try to figure out, how to solve their own disappearances. And this is just one of many stories, but that's what they did. They went onto her property and did that, but it revealed nothing. I forget how long they kept the camera and microphones there, but it really did not solve anything. They caught several people talking, caught some illegal activity, on and on and on, but nothing about Beau's disappearance at all. So the disappearance continued. Now, some people did, though, prove that Joanna and Beau had mutual friends. For example, on Facebook, Beau had an account, Joanna had an account. They weren't friends themselves, but Beau had some friends who also were on the friends list of Joanna. So it's kind of that Kevin Bacon thing, how many degrees of separation. But given Beau's work, his app, his history, everything else, once again, maybe that's not that unusual. Especially you have to remember, Beau and Joanna did not really live that far away from each other, just 3 or 4 or 5 blocks. Remember, his gym was right where she lived. So this continued, this hammering of Joanna continued. All the while, his friends from Massachusetts, Texas, elsewhere, all descended on Santa Monica, going all over the streets, posting flyers, nothing. It was like he got out of that Uber and he got beamed up to a UFO. They were going street, businesses, the gym. It's Santa Monica, and when I look at a disappearance like this, one of the things when I hear about a city disappearance, I start thinking about, well, is there a river nearby? Well, I've been to Santa Monica many times. There is no river. It's not St. Louis. It's not New Orleans. It's not even Tampa that has a bay. It's just all concrete and steel. There aren't even any woods or anything that somebody could like stumble into and die and then the remains be covered up or anything. It's just nothing but that. And that's what was so perplexing about his disappearance. In addition, except for that bank statement, this access, somebody tried to access his bank statement at Wells Fargo and it was unsuccessful. No calls, no texts, no pings, nothing after he got out of that Uber. So, and you can also see, why people might be suspicious of the Uber driver. So what happens next? So once again, he goes missing November 30th, just after Thanksgiving of 2021. Then the next big thing that happens is Joanna Good dies. And in fact, she died a month or 6 weeks about before UnFound did its own episode on Beau's disappearance. I think that she died of a drug overdose. She never did get any help, never cleaned herself up. She died on January 14th of 2023. And I think this happened after I'd already talked to Beau's man's mother once and was preparing somewhere down the road to cover his disappearance, feature it on the podcast. So this happened just very coincidentally. Joanna Good dies January 14th of 2023. And so if she knew anything, she took it to her grave. Now you should know, people looked into some of her associates, of course, guys in her life, really never went anywhere before or after she died. And as far as I can tell, as far as the police go, even though they knew she was an addict and everything, they seemed to think that she was, forthcoming. And she really didn't know what happened, even though it was Beau who put her address or the address of her house into the Uber app and for him to be dropped off there. Even though he originally said he'd put his home address, he changed it. So here we are, the disappearance, Joanna dies. We're getting prepared for the episode to come out, I think in February of 2023. So from a disappearance analysis point of view, how can somebody disappear in the middle of a city? Well, maybe he got picked up. Maybe he died in a house, let's just say Joanna's house, and it was covered up. Maybe he went somewhere and something happened and just nobody's looked there yet. Maybe the Uber driver is lying. There are many different possibilities. And the truth is, circumstantially, they're all still possible here as we cover this on Dr. T's show on November 14th of 2024. But all of you just have to understand, for this type of disappearance to happen in the middle of a city where there isn't like a body of water, very unusual, very, very unusual. Even though I know LA has a lot of disappearances, but you look at the person, then you look at the circumstances, unusual. Of course, we can't forget about the 911 call. Was that a mistake? Was he? It seems to me that you could look at it as he was being taken somewhere and he mistakenly used the Uber 911. He actually meant to use regular texting somebody and got confused in the riding in the Uber, because you could look at that text and say, that sounds like the text you'd send to a friend of yours. Hey, I'm coming in Uber. Look for the car. It's gray. That's one way you could look at it. There's other interpretations. Maybe he could have been using it for real 911, hoping that the police would get it and then know which Uber car he was in. But of course, the police, I don't think, ever took it seriously. So we move down. We get into February. We cover the episode. We cover the disappearance. His mother does a fantastic interview. Of course, you can imagine it's a very long episode. And in April 25th, approximately 2 months after UnFound's own coverage, and many, I think, many other podcasts, YouTube channels had featured his disappearance. I think my buddy John Lorden on his YouTube channel had covered Beau's disappearance, maybe sometime in 2022 or something like that. Got a lot of attention. Beau's remains were eventually found. And if we could put up the one map that just with the little dotted line, just a little dotted line one, if you could put that one up, I would appreciate it. So remember, when he went missing, a bunch of people flocked to that area and searched all over the place. That one right there. Thank you very much. Now, what you're looking at here on this map, right there in the top center, if you don't know, when you see blue dots, that means walking. Of course, it's a solid blue line. That means driving. So this is walking distance. Where you see in the top center of the picture there, where the first dot is, that is the address, 1338 Berkeley Street in Santa Monica. That is where Joanna Good lived at the time in November of 2021. Now, if you follow that and it goes in a downward to the left trajectory, so in a, although I don't think everything's like north, south, east, west in LA, but we'll just say, keep it simple, in a southwest direction. If you follow that dotted line down to the end of it, and it's 1341 Yale Street, that is where Bowman's remains were found. As you can see there, it is not, it's more than 1/10 of a mile, but it's less than 1/4 of a mile from where he was dropped off. Even though they had done searches all over the place. And you can now put up the next picture with the street view, if you could. The next one has there, that is the alley. So that alley that you're looking at that goes off in the direction on the left side of the screen going back, that alley comes out right next to Joanne Good's house. And he was found inside this chain link fence area there that you see there. It's abandoned, dilapidated. And it's really, you know, I look through these pictures over and over and over again back in 2023, but you can actually see the degradation of this little complex right here where people used to live on the upstairs, the downstairs, and that little hut you see right in the middle of the screen. People used to live there, and then you can see year by year it gets worse and worse and worse until nobody's living in there and it's dilapidated and there's a fence around it. Beau's remains were found inside this fenced area, and his body was like lying up against, like it was like on its side from, I've not seen, of course, any pictures, lying on its side up against a wall inside this fenced off area. And this area became to be known once it was abandoned, dilapidated, and, you know, blocked off. Nobody was allowed to live there anymore. Of course, as you can imagine, this became a place for homeless people. And my understanding is that quite a few people knew that there was a body over there, but nobody ever said anything. This is once again, if you get into disappearances, and this is all that I do, this is my work, these are the types of things you have to understand. That living in that culture is not like living in, you know, living in a condo culture. It's just not. So you have to get into those people's minds to try to understand these things. And so how that was in an accident, I don't know all of the particulars. His mother has never given me the step-by-step process of how this happened. Did a city official go on there, you know, to figure out were they going to demolish all this something and somebody find it like that? Or did some homeless person get a conscience? I don't know. But the remains were found. They were eventually identified as Beau's. And as far as the coroner can say, given the condition of the body and everything, seemingly, as best as you can do with science that we have here in the 21st century, made the determination that Beau's remains were there practically the whole time since he went missing. There were no signs of foul play, no bullet holes, no stabbings, nothing like that. Of course, it being out in the LA sun for what would be a year and a half, we know the kind of toll that it's going to take on, biological matter. The best the coroner could say was, no obvious signs of foul play. And of course, they did DNA and everything. But I think even before they did that, looking at the clothes and everything, they kind of knew who it was. Now, you should know, Beau's computers never found. His phone, never found. Wallet and other things, never found. Those are all still missing to this day. The only thing that was found were he and the clothes that he was wearing. And that is the disappearance of Bowman, from disappearance to discovery. Maybe Dr. T, you want to get in and maybe talk a little bit about this? You have questions. I'm hoping we get questions from the audience as well. But as you can probably tell, this is a disappearance that a lot of different theories are still very viable. It's very possible that he did go into the house with Joanna Good and overdosed, and then she and others went and deposited him down there. There is a belief that Beau might have relapsed back into his drug addiction, and that's why he was down at Skid Row that day. He got dropped off there, and then he knew where this homeless area was. He could go down there and do his drugs in peace. Nobody would see him, out of the way. That is, of course, a possibility. It very well could just be got mugged, and it had nothing to do with Joanna Good or drugs or anything else. Tough one. Tough.
So so this is tough. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to bring on Annie and Eddie. Cameron, if he's around. I know that he was stuck in some bad traffic. Actually, I might be able to just check the list here to see if he's on. But
and while you're doing that, checking that, I do need to say one thing. After the episode came, maybe summer after his remains were found, pretty sure, maybe summer of 2023, there was a woman who contacted me who said that at some point before Beau went missing, of course, she was in Joanna's house. She knew Joanna, and she claimed that she actually saw Joanna and Beau together in Joanna's house. The problem is that's the only person that has ever said that. I don't know if she's ever said it anywhere else. You get a lot of claims like this in disappearances. I think I have a responsibility to say that. I don't know how much credibility I would put into that, because if they did know each other, then we have to start thinking about some sort of cover-up foul play angle. But so far, besides that woman, nobody's ever contacted me. To my knowledge, nobody's ever contacted Beau's family saying, with proof that, yeah, Beau and Joanna knew each other.
So I really want to bring on Annie for a minute. Annie is a College of Psychology student. She's a senior. She studies this, Eddie, I know, is in Fischler Academy. And so, her, Annie's insight into psychology and addiction, I think, would be very beneficial right now. And Eddie, he can also weigh in if he wanted to. I just know that Annie is College of Psychology. So, Annie, are you here with us still? I think you are. Almost certain you are. I'd love to have you come on and see what you think before I put my 2 cents in, because this is an addict. I mean, it's clear. We have a couple of hints that this is someone who suffers from the disease of addiction because of the app, because of where he spent with, I think you said it was Passages. Right. And Passages is probably, I'm thinking, probably a rehab, a treatment treatment center, treatment facility of some kind. That's why in the beginning I asked you, was it AA or NA? And if it's a 12-step program, of course, there's other programs that are out there, not just the old school 12-step. 12-step, of course, the origin of that was Bill W.
Friends of Bill.
Remember, Friends of Bill, exactly. And then alcohol. There's a focus on alcoholism with AA. With NA, which is Narcotics Anonymous, it's more of an understanding of the disease of addiction, which you had said earlier, hey, I'm not addicted to anything. I would beg to differ. I think you might be. Uh-oh. And I think it's in the form of disc golf.
Ah, all right.
Is it not?
Well, I played for a while, so I've kicked that habit.
Dr. Oh, you haven't played in a while. How come? What happened?
Well, let's not get on this. Stick with this.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I want to hear about what happened. Okay, but anyway, the disease of addiction. In the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, it talks about addictive personality, and it talks about addiction there. I think, you probably know where I'm going with this already, that I really agree with your last statement about getting high, going to this spot, and then that's what happened, the demise of that. I wonder if you knew at all his drug of choice. Did you know that?
I don't have it in my notes for tonight. I don't know.
I just,
I will tell you most likely what we usually talk about is meth and heroin.
There it is. Meth. I bet it is.
Those are the main two. Cocaine, not very much.
Right. I mean,
psychedelics.
You don't die of an overdose of that anyway. I mean, and it's very possible if it was heroin, that maybe fentanyl was involved too. I mean, who knows? Nobody knows, right? So no toxicology. So
I don't know how accurate it can be a year and a half after.
Exactly. So, there's no way to know except sort of a psychological profile of him as an addict. Now that's, look at Matthew Perry.
Yes.
Right. So, the minute that I heard about Matt Perry's death, I knew I just knew that he had relapsed. There was a relapse that had been going on, and that he died of an overdose. Like there was no doubt in my mind if I had to bet money on it. Because if you know anything about addiction and addicts, it's not about willpower. It really isn't. It's about a disease, and it's about not really being able, like you're responsible for your recovery, but you're sort of not responsible. Once you put a substance in, it's game over. And bring him to a place like that last picture, which is clearly like a crack house.
And to be clear, that's the picture you see there is the way it looked at that time.
Sure.
It wasn't like he walked in there while people were still living there. He somehow knew somebody, or he knew how to get inside that fence to be where he was eventually found.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Let's give Annie a minute. Annie, are you around? Really want to hear what your take on this is, and Eddie too. Like I said, Eddie is not in the College of Psychology, but he studies with Fischler Academy, and he's going to be a teacher someday. So I don't know what happened to them, but they're maybe we do them next season. We do the disappearance of Annie and
there's
Eddie.
Eddie right there. Maybe Eddie. I see Eddie there.
All right. Okay. So what about Annie? The disappearance of Annie. Where are you? Where's your partner? There she is.
There she is. You gotta unmute those people.
Lord have mercy. All right. So I'd like to hear the two of you and what your take is. Right? What's your take on all of this after you heard everything and what I just now weighed in on about addiction? So what are your thoughts or questions? Annie, you want to go first, and then Eddie will weigh in.
Eddie muted first, so I was gonna let Eddie take it.
Very good.
Oh,
Good.
shoot. Okay. Whew.
Oh,
No, I think like everything we talked about was really interesting. In general, I think it is like great that we're talking about it in general because I think too many people probably would have been quick to just kind of write off his disappearance and then eventual passing as, just another addict who relapsed and happened to overdose. Because I think people are way too quick to just write it off as that and not give them the humanity that they really deserve at the end of the day.
exactly. Well said. Annie, what's your from a
I should inject something more in here. Once again, we don't really get into sexuality and everything on a podcast unless it's relationship related. If we're thinking, well, he could have been going to Joanna's to have a rendezvous. Bo is gay, so it's if they did encounter each other that day, it was not for sexual reasons. It could have been for drug. It had to be for drug reasons because he had a boyfriend who was back east who was helping him with the app. So it was not sexually motivated, even though you could look at his stop at the 7-Eleven. What's ice? It's gum and mouthwash. What are we talking about here? That to me, you got to admit, it does sound like maybe somebody's going somewhere to meet somebody and doesn't want to have stinky breath. Maybe. One interpretation. Go ahead, Ed. What were you going to say? Please.
Annie, what psychological profile here?
Yeah.
Everything that you know about addicts, addiction, the disease of addiction, all of that.
No, I think I just kind of want to piggyback off of what Eddie said. I think oftentimes in situations like this, unfortunately, people can have a tendency to think about addiction as a cause rather than a symptom, and then not really kind of dig deeper and like really think about like what could have caused them to get to this point, these different things, and then kind of dehumanize people that are struggling with addiction, and then what I mean, not give them as much time as maybe you would another person that is missing, because that's like, oh well, hey, well, because of what they were doing, this was bound to happen anyways, or oh well, their life is almost less valuable than someone that isn't struggling with this problem. So I think it's really important in situations like this to really just remember that these are real people, and like everyone has their issues. For some people it's addiction, for some people it's spending too much time at work. Maybe it can manifest in a lot of different ways. And
right.
Really just remembering the person at the heart of it, and that everyone deserves the right to have somebody really look for them and to hopefully be found.
I love that. I love that. Yes. I want to underscore that. Now I know, Ed, this is not usually your angle. I know that that's not your angle, but our angle definitely is about raising awareness and raising, consciousness and educating people about, in this case, addiction. It's some people might go, well, you got what you got, you get what you get, and you keep doing that, keep doing the same thing over, and you're going to keep getting it.
Reap what you sow.
What's that?
They reap what they have the attitude. These people reaped what they sowed.
Right. But we don't do that with people with diabetes. We don't do that. We don't do that with people who don't take the cholesterol medication, who wind up suffering medical consequences for that. Like, we don't do that, but we have a tendency to stigmatize and demonize folks with addiction. And addiction, it sounds to me like this man was really trying hard, and engaging his recovery by getting this app and all this other stuff that he was doing. So there's a saying in recovery circles, there's only 3 options if you continue to use: jails, institutions, meaning treatment or hospitals, and death. And oftentimes I would say this a lot. I would bring this meeting in, and sort of a support meeting into the substance abuse program at Paul Rhine, the women's jail. And I did that for like 8 years. And I would always say to the girls there, the women there, because they were like, it was a revolving door. I mean, you talk about their children have been taken away from them. the degradation that they experienced using, and just the ways and means to get more of whatever it was, their drug of choice. It really isn't their choice. Like, they didn't say, oh, I can't wait to hustle my body on on the stroll. Like, that nobody wants that. Nobody wants to go to Santa Monica Boulevard in that really very scary part of town, just because it's like not. Some people think that it's just like fun and games, and it isn't. And when you're living that life, and I have so many people I know who have died from the disease of addiction. A really dear friend who overdosed, not because she was not trying. It's not about that. And so I really love that Eddie and Annie are bringing to light that folks who suffer from the disease of addiction are suffering. They're suffering.
Yeah, I think we also have to remember, once again, I'm still very open to the idea. Maybe there was some sort of cover up or anything, but if we're going to stick on this, we also have to remember, given Bo's position, given his status, starting the sober grid and everything, if he had fallen back into his addiction, he had to be more motivated than anybody to maybe keep it on the down low as well. I think that's something that he would have been very motivated to hide it from people, given his status.
True, but again, that's like a pride thing, and I feel
I know that.
Right, I feel shame about it.
Yep.
The relapse, and I can't face anyone else. I mean, this is one of the reasons why also in recovery circles, it's frowned upon to start disclosing, if you're a celebrity especially, or if you're somebody, a mover and a shaker, someone who's creating an app. We had Recovery Unplugged on a few weeks ago. That is treatment for addicts using music. It's really cool. If you have a chance, you should look at the show. It's really, really, really good show. And Richie Supa from Aerosmith, one of the writers, of the songwriters, Grammy winner, Richie Supa, founded Recovery Unplugged. You got to be careful. You can't start becoming the poster child for recovery, and then, God forbid, relapse. They say it's a Just for Today program. So anyway, addiction is a topic that I really love to talk about. So that's why I'm harping on it a little bit. And I don't want to steal away the disappearance piece of it, but ultimately he was found.
He was. And, all those items still missing, was it some sort of mugging or something? Like I said, I don't think we're ever going to know. I will tell you, at the time that I thought he just got dropped off there, walked down the street to get high and overdosed.
Yeah.
Once again, every time I kind of, crosses my mind, and of course, preparing for the show, I look at the 911 text. I think that, well, what are the odds that he got dropped off at in an address where there is an addict living there? I mean, how much do these coincidences line up into how many coincidences do you need before it becomes something substantial? And that's still something that I'm trying to deal with.
Right. Something that we talked about, I think we talked about it the last time on Halloween when we were doing the anatomy. People watch these crime shows. Yeah. I despise them. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to say anything bad about any of you, our followers, anybody, our students, to each his own, fine. I like watching Heartland. It's a Canadian show about horses. But anyway, the point is that on a true crime show or even a regular Hollywood show, you're going to see the case be solved immediately before the commercial. All the evidence is going to be so clear and laid out for us. That's not the way it works. when someone dies or disappears or they're missing, it is really hard to try to piece together the evidence and the documentation and well, this is how he was the body was found, and that definitely is going to tell us A, B, and C. No, it definitely tells us nothing, right? So unless you have like an autopsy and any other kinds of scientific evidence, which it sounds like in this case there wasn't any.
It's very common. I mean, I have another disappearance. I don't know if we've ever covered his death on here. Tom Brown remains found a couple years later. No signs of obvious foul play or anything, even though a lot of people think that he was murdered. No obvious signs of foul play. So unless somebody, comes forward and says, you know what, I did it, and can offer facts to that effect, go a big question mark forever.
Absolutely.
You have any questions? Do we have any questions from the chat?
We have a couple of questions in the chat, right? Eddie, let's see. We have one. We actually have one. Ebony, I'll just read it. Thank you for being here to speak with us. Was a search warrant done on his cell phone? If so, was there anything significant found in the search history, text messages, GPS data, etc.?
They never got his cell phone. I think that he had some other cell phones back at his place. He had more than one cell phone. I don't find that to be that unusual. You go through my place, you might find two of my old cell phones as well. The cell phone that he had with him that day, gone. They checked his records. That's how they know, that he took all these Uber and Lyft rides. But after he got dropped off at whatever time it was, at the 1338 Berkeley Street address, everything stopped except for somebody trying to access his Wells Fargo account.
That's interesting.
It is.
That's interesting. That part right there. Yeah.
No money was ever stolen. I've never heard that somebody actually got in there, took any money or anything. Of course, there has been. We can theorize all night. We could be here for 3 more hours theorizing. But somebody, what he did, he get out there, and did he get attacked? And, he was extorted or, forced into trying to access his bank account. Something.
Or maybe he owed money to somebody. I mean, who knows? Who knows? But Ed, listen, thank you for being here tonight. I'm so excited that you said yes before the show actually went live. You said yes to 3 times.
Yeah, how could I say no? It's not possible to say no to you, Dr. Telesco. So
well, that's what people tell me, but I don't know. I mean, Eddie and Annie say no a lot, but anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm not really. No, I am. I'm kidding. I love them. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about next season. Okay. We have one more show, and that's next Thursday night. And we have somebody, I'm so super psyched about next week too. I've been excited about the whole season. It's been a great season, I think. And I want to thank Annie and Eddie and, of course, Cameron for all their help behind the scenes. But, so next Thursday, our last show is a homie and a homegirl, homeboy and a homegirl from Homeboy Industries. You guys have heard me talk about Father Gregory Boyle, who I adore. Love him very much. Jesuit priest who is the founder and executive director of Homeboy Industries in LA, probably right around where Bowman, hung out, or his last day or his last days. But so Gregory Boyle was on my show a few years ago, and just an amazing, amazing guy with an amazing philosophy that actually works. And he's got the largest gang rehabilitation in the country, and it is the most successful. And it's successful because, according to him, if people really want to change and they come into Homeboy Industries, and then they start to get their lives back on track, and they start reimagining who they are and transforming who they are and healing who they are and healing all the injury, then they are successful. And so we're going to have 2 on. We're going to have a homie and a home girl on the show next Thursday. I can't wait. Yeah. Okay. So if you can look, great. If you can watch the show, any of your followers, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Trying to get 1,000. We're almost there. And next season, I'm almost there. We're almost confirmed with everyone besides Ed. And we're going to make it, it's going to be spotlight on law enforcement. You know, like sometimes they have like law enforcement week, law enforcement month. Well, this is going to be the law enforcement season. And we're going to come at it from all different angles, you know, families of police. How do families deal? How do marriages work when both are police officers? How does a mother deal with a son who is goes to work every day risking his life? You know, like we have all of these different things that we're going to be talking about, law enforcement related, this season coming up, and that will start in January. So we're going to be taking a little bit of a break after next week. We'll take a little bit of a Thanksgiving and holiday break, and then we'll be right back at it in January.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. Yes.
All right. Thank you all for watching. Thank you, Ed, again for all the work that
Thanks
you
for
do.
having me.
Keep up the great work. Offline, we'll talk about why you don't do disc golf anymore
Yes.
or haven't in a while.
Sure.
And that'll be that. We'll talk. We could talk offline, but
Yes.
thank you, Penny. Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to ask for Matt, if Matthew, one of my students in the webinar, doesn't mind hanging back. Everybody else needs to leave. Don't forget to email me if you were here tonight so that I know that I can give you your extra credit point. And yeah, that's it. So we're ready to go off the air. And Eddie, that's your call. You get to ring that bell. Let me know when you do.